All right, heroes, coming at you. I saw KG here and Trig a second ago, and K Dixie, and so something's starting. Yay, music! This has been a crazy morning here in the Jewcurious community. We got KG Wilcox. Ugh, another ad. That's the thing about Twitch, is it's sort of ad supported, and if put these things on, it shows a little bit of an ad just to keep these things free. YouTube does something a little bit similar, but we are here. Let's see, we've got Cara Amelie says, hello, K Dixie, it's all good. Yep, still figuring out the live streaming software here on Twitch, and also we've got this new app installed called Mob Crush that transmits it to Facebook and to YouTube as well. So as many people can see this as are able to see different platforms. So delighted to be learning with all of you this morning. Today is it's your call, really. It's an Ask Me Anything session, and I'm going to go ahead and show my face. Just like that. So, hey everybody, welcome to the Jewcurious show. This is the Jewcurious morning show, as distinct from the Jewcurious not morning show. I don't know. We started this podcast about a year ago. I got to check the dates and see when that dropped. I think we're right about there. So we've been learning together for about a year now in different ways. I've been on YouTube for, let's say, 5 years. About as long as I've been a rabbi, I've been on YouTube, and even a little bit before. I did a couple of videos in Rabbinical school that somebody asked me to take down. So because maybe I wasn't teaching my best Torah at that time. You see if you can find those in the archive somewhere. KG Wilcox says, ta-da! It's internet magic, folks. This, I'll say it's been a crazy 24 hours for me personally. Let's see. I've kind of got some news. I've got half news. I'm going to save my news for later. There's something pending about my future as a rabbi. Well, I'm always going to be a rabbi, no matter what. Like, it doesn't wash off, for better or worse. But some things are developing into a project that I may be taking on for the next year. Will not distract, I don't think, I hope, one whit from the Jewcurious community here. But it may mean that I have a day job as well. So that's actually something I'm really super duper excited about, and it's moving forward. But the ink's not dry, so I'm super superstitious about talking about it yet. But in any case, yeah, Trigger Snip says, no day job. So it's okay. It's actually serving Jewish people and Jewcurious people, and it will actually help to keep this community thriving, as it were. So in any case, KG Wilcox says day jobs are good, but no jinxes. So no jinxes, no buying me a Coke. I probably should stay away from high sugar beverages as it is, and caffeinated beverages, but here goes. Okay, got a little bit of the morning move juice in me, and really excited to learn with people. If you're not familiar with the Jewcurious show, or the word Jewcurious even, let me just share with you, this is a name that I came up with, and I didn't invent this. I've heard people use the word Jewcurious before, but this is what I call folks that, let's say, are curious about Judaism no matter where they're coming from. In the sense that I've seen a lot of people, let's say, watch my videos, ask me questions, listen to the podcast, give me a high five, say, hey, let's keep learning together. And I started to say, okay, who are these folks? And did some surveys and, talked to some folks, and it's all kinds of people who come here and are welcome here. For example, people who are considering converting to Judaism, and so they're curious about why Jews do the things that they do, how we do those things, what do we do? So if you're curious about Judaism from that perspective, you're considering converting, or maybe you're pretty far down the track and you're like, driving to the mikveh today, mazel tov, I'll just say it that way. You are Jewcurious, you are welcome here. If you are somebody who's been Jewish your whole life, but maybe you don't understand why Jews do all the things that they do, what's the reasoning, what are the rules, what's the meaning behind things that Jews do, what's the meaning behind some of our deeper texts and scriptures and wisdom. If you're curious about that, you are absolutely welcome here. I've met a lot of people who are completely devoted to another faith. For example, Christians who just want to know more about the Hebrew roots of their own tradition and learn with me, and you're absolutely welcome here. And just some, I'll say, spiritual seekers, right, who are looking at a bunch of different paths. They're saying, what is the right path for me? What does Judaism have to offer? If you're curious about that, you are 100% welcome here. And so if this describes any of you, I highly recommend you hang out with us for a little while. If you like the cut of my jib, I don't know where exactly my jib is cut, but if you enjoy learning with us in this way, please consider following this channel. If you're watching me on Facebook or on YouTube, I highly recommend you come over. That's cool. You can watch, you can hang out, you can lurk. If you want to chat with us and ask your questions in the live chat, I highly recommend you join us in the Twitch channel. And so should have the link there. It's just Twitch, Twitch, as in, when something moves suddenly, twitch.tv/Jewcurious, just like the name of the show. So twitch.tv/Jewcurious. There is a live chat going right now. My friends KG Wilcox are here, Trigger Sniv, and K Dixie is here as well. And so you can ask whatever questions you have about Judaism, about me personally. I've had a bit of a twisty-turny path in Judaism. I've been Jewish for, let's say, about 19 years now, and I am slightly older than 19. So this is something I converted to as an adult. And if you want to ask me questions about what that process was like, what my journey's been like since then, why I decided to, turn it up to 11 and become a rabbi about 5 years ago. So let me know. I will absolutely answer whatever questions you have. I see some questions in the chat already, but I'll say, just last plug, if you want to ask questions in the live chat, the people in the live chat are super nice. So don't, I know it's the internet. I know sometimes it gets kind of crusty and people get kind of mean and trolly and whatnot. I am, and my friends will attest to this, I am quick on the banhammer. If you come in asking disrespectful stuff or get smarmy about Jews, if you're throwing that anti-Semitic BS around, boop, gone. So I have no reservations about that. I'm a big proponent of free speech, but I am a defender of kind speech. So I'll put it that way. So I got some questions in the chat already. It looks like I've got to find that question. And it's a little tricky. I'm using my daughter's PC for this because that's where my software runs best. Let's see. I saw something about the evil eye. Okay, here we go. Let's see. KG Wilcox says, so my friend's daughter is having a baby. B'Shah Tovah, that's wonderful. They're having a baby shower. Unheard of, unthinkable. Then they put the baby's name on the invitation. I'm, quote, having the big one, Elizabeth. Hat tip to Red Fox in the character of Fred Sanford in Sanford and Son. So can I take preventative measures? And so this is really interesting to me. This is, I'll say, in the category of Jewish superstition. We don't like to, as I was talking about earlier, I've got like kind of a job on the line. I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to jinx it. I've got this superstition as well. It's a thing in Jewish households that we don't like to plan certain things for the future, or don't like to prepare for things that haven't happened yet, in the sense of, I'll say, baby showers are less of a thing. Not, it's not like baby showers aren't Jewish and Jewish people don't have baby showers, but they're, in some Jewish communities, they are less of a thing because it's almost like tempting fate, I guess. And so very religious, or I don't want to say very religious because I know there's different kinds of being religious. But there are Jews who will not buy a crib until after the baby is born, right? Because it's like, God forbid, you buy a crib. That's like making plans for the future for something that hasn't happened yet. You may be tempting fate, and so people don't buy cribs. They don't buy diapers. They don't buy layettes. They don't buy the 8-pack of onesies. Which, having had 4 kids, those 8-pack of of interchangeable onesies are a godsend. So some people just don't prepare for that. And also in the Jewish community, we often don't announce the baby's name until well after it's born. For example, people don't announce the name for the first time for a baby boy until the bris, right? When the kid's 8 days old. For a girl, if you're having a simchat bat or brit bat or some other celebration welcoming your daughter into the covenant of the Jewish people, you know, they may give the baby a nickname like Baby X or, you know, Little Boy Cohen or something like that until the baby is officially named in the Jewish community. And this comes from, you know, a history of tragedy. This comes from a history of not being certain about the future, especially there are times in our history where, you know, the infant mortality rate was high because we were in terrible living conditions due to outside forces and discrimination and things like that. So there is this superstition against, you know, sharing a baby's name, all the way up to even buying diapers before the baby is born, because God forbid something bad happens and then you have to kind of rewind that whole deal. Nevertheless, Jews have always been living more or less like amongst, you know, other peoples with other traditions, and there's some interaction there. And so baby showers are a thing. So when my boys were born, you know, 20 some years ago, we had baby showers, but we didn't necessarily share what the baby's name was going to be until the Brit Milah, until the bris, or until the baby namings when my daughters were born. So that's a thing. And KG Wilcox, good friend here of the Jewcurious community, is a little bit verklempt, is a little bit stressed out. Like they're putting the baby's name on the thing when the baby hasn't been born yet. And, you know, is this a thing that we do, or is it, you know, is it just, it makes people nervous, right? It feels like it's going to jinx this situation. My thinking is, and this Trigger Snip says, evil eye. I guess I don't follow. Yeah, it's a little bit ein hora. Like if you are, if you announce a baby's name, if you get diapers, if you get a crib, you're inviting in the evil eye. Which I'll say, if you don't believe in things like the evil eye, and it's less compelling. My general advice when you know, families are having babies and things like this, and I'm a big fan of, you know, that commandment, kibud av v'em. You should honor your mother and father. Right, so if your mother and father are like big into the evil eye, you know, maybe you shouldn't be doing the things that make them all upset. And yet, when it comes to young people starting their own family, I counsel the parents and the in-laws and things like that to let the kids have their family in the way that they choose. And this is the kindest thing that you can do for them. It's the most supportive, nurturing thing that you can do for them. And it feels a little bit uncomfortable. I get that. You want the best for your children. You don't want to invite in bad luck. You don't want them to depart from, you know, values that you hold. And yet the kindest thing that you can do for them is let them build their family. Right? Give them that agency. Give them that power. Because they're going to have to make a lot of decisions soon. And, you know, they're not going to call you about every single one. And that's a good thing. And I say this as someone who is now, my oldest son just got married. And I want to give him all sorts of advice. And I want to, you know, I want to say, here's all the things that I learned. Don't do what I did or do what I did, etc. I don't know. You know, I was a young father, so I made a lot of mistakes. I'll say the kindest thing you can do is just let them know you are there to listen, you know, to give solicited advice. But if they're going to, you know, have a baby shower and put the name of the baby on the invitation and things like that, that's their call. And they are the parents now. And you are actually encouraging them to grow in that area of responsibility by just saying, you know, maybe say it once. Like, that's not what I would have done, but don't say it like 10 times. It's okay for grandparents to say, that's not what I would have done, but you're the mom and I support you. And I think that's the right way to go in the long term. That's my advice based on having been a child of grandparents. Let's say, having been a parent, a young parent with no idea what to do, and yet my parents had very different ideas of how to raise children. That some of which I learned a lot from, and some of which I disagreed with because it was a different time and place that I was raising my children. So I'll say that's the kindest thing to do. A bit of advice I got from a senior rabbi many years ago, just as an example. If let's say if a future mother-in-law calls you and says, "My son is getting married to his fiance. I want you to do the wedding, and here's what I want the wedding to be like, and here's the date that we've picked out." I say, best thing you could say is, Mazel tov, I'm so happy for you and your family, and I can't wait to talk to your kids about the wedding that they want. Meaning, I do not deal with in-laws when it comes to officiating a wedding or planning a wedding. The kids, even they're not kids anymore, they're getting married. The people who are getting married are the ones that I expect to make all of the decisions, and I'm kind to the in-laws, but I make it very clear up front, if I'm involved in this wedding, the in-laws are not in charge. And that is, it feels harsh to the in-laws, but that is a kindness toward the kids, and it's encouraging them to make adult decisions as they're beginning to start their adult family. So that's just a personal decision based on experience on all sides of this. I'm now firmly in the sandwich generation. Thank God my parents are still living, but my parents are older, and they have health issues. They have things that I like to respond to from time to time. Meanwhile, I have two little kids who are 7 and 10, and I have two big kids who are 21 and 23. So I've got little kids, I've got grown kids, I've got living parents, thank God, and I am firmly in the middle of all that. And so I'm learning a lot as I go. So let's see. It looks like Teresa joined us. Is Teresa here in the chat? All right. Love having Teresa. Let's see who else is here. Cara Amelie, Trigger Snib. Let's see. This chat is moving a little fast. We're getting too popular here. God forbid. Let's see. Just checking the chat here. I know this is bad radio. Cara Amelie, calls me out. I should stay away from caffeinated beverages. Drinks coffee conspicuously. Trigger Snip says, I have to go in 15. Good, I need all the help I can get. Let's see. It's good to have you here, Trig. Whenever you can join us, I'm really glad to have you here. Let me turn off the background music here, just like that, for a little bit of inspiration as we get started. Trigger Snib says, I've realized support for your fellow man is so important. Even if you don't understand the whys and hows, they live their life, as long as it isn't hurtful to them or anyone else. Awesome. I agree with you 100%. As Rabbi Hillel said, do not do to another person what is hateful to you. And then there's a positive statement of that in the Torah, you love your neighbor as you love yourself. So just looking up here. Let's see. Looks like a question. Oof. The chat is going so fast, I'm having a little trouble scrolling up right now. In any case, I'll take a little pause for station identification. This is the Jewcurious show, and if you are a Jewcurious person, you are welcome here. This interface is driving me insane. Okay, let's see. Learning how to use my technology. They do not teach you this stuff in rabbinical school. Let's see. There's a little mention of the ads in here. So, I mean, I don't know if that was helpful, KG, for just confirmed choices that young people are making as far as their own decisions. Sorry, having a little bit of trouble with the chat scrolling here. Wish if anybody knows a good chat interface for PC and Twitch. Love to hear. Kay Dixie says, how do you continue your children's Jewish education during the summer months? At least here where we live, Hebrew school is out for the summer. So there is one of the great things that's available in the Jewish community. I'll say it's not cheap. It's actually can be quite expensive, although there's options to get support for that, is Jewish summer camps. And this is something, I was talking about this a little bit in a course in the Jewcurious School on Jewish Spaces. A very important Jewish space in the world these days is Jewish summer camps. So, for example, in the conservative movement, we have Camp Ramah. There are summer camps associated with the Reform movement and presumably in the Orthodox movements as well. But, over the last, let's say, 50, 70, 100 years, summer camp has been a thing in North America. Kids in the cities get to get out and get some fresh air in the summertime when the cities tend to be hot and, stink a little bit. But as the summer camp movement became a thing over the last few decades, sort of what co-arose with that is Jewish summer camps, or like summer camps for Jewish kids. It's just like some communities have vacation Bible school. This is interesting to me because there's a temple in L.A. here, a synagogue in L.A. called Valley Beth Shalom, that people in the know sort of refer to as VBS. And in the Christian world that I came from, and a lot of my family's still a part of, when you say VBS, you're talking about Vacation Bible School, which is like Christian summer camps. So, part of my Facebook feed is talking about the great Jewish things they have going on at VBS. Part of my Facebook feed with my family is like, hey, my kids are going to VBS to learn about Jesus and things like that. So, just a little curiosity there. But there's a thing that we have in many communities, God willing you're close to one of these, is Jewish summer camps. And these can be sleepaway camps. In some places they have day camps as well. So if your kids are smaller and aren't ready for sleepaway camp, or maybe you just don't have the bandwidth, or the investment is a little bit steep for a sleepaway camp, there are day camps available as well that focus on Jewish stuff. So it's a summer camp like other summer camps. There's arts and crafts, there's playing outside, there's swimming in the pool, there's taking canoe trips, there's what have you, those things that kids like to do over the summer. But there are Jewish versions of that have sort of a Jewish tom or flavor to them. They talk about Jewish themes. Maybe the arts and crafts have a Jewish ritual theme to them. At Jewish sleepaway camps, they might have morning services and afternoon services and evening services incorporated into the day of swimming and canoeing and hatchet throwing and whatever kids do at camp. I never went to a Jewish summer camp myself, so I can't tell you. Just these are sort of guesses based on observations. So Jewish summer camps are a great alternative for kids. I'll say, because they're sleepaway camps, they're in facilities with highly trained staff and all sorts of safety precautions. They are not cheap. However, if you think Jewish summer camp and a sleepaway camp might be right for you, in many communities, the Jewish Federation or some organization will subsidize that for families who need a little bit of help. In some communities, whether you need the help or not, they'll give scholarships, sort of a partial scholarship for the first year that your kid is going to summer camp, just to encourage people to try this out. And why I really am interested in this and want to recommend people at least look at it is that when you think about, Karen's question was about, how do you supplement what they're doing during the year over the summer? And so presumably you've already gotten your kids in Hebrew school or day school or something like that, and you want them to continue their Jewish learning throughout the summer. It's been verified, or at least conjectured based on survey results and various scientific analyses, that Jewish summer camp is about the most effective Jewish educational program for young people that exists in the world today. And so They looked at different kind of educational programs for young people, whether it was a day school, meaning kids go to school all day and learn the 3 R's plus some Jewish stuff, or supplemental schools, which are like your afternoon Hebrew school or religious schools on top of a public school situation, and Jewish summer camp, and all these different alternatives. Jewish summer camp was far and away the most effective at helping kids feel connected to the Jewish community long term, most effective in ensuring that kids would maintain a Jewish connection into their teen years, into adulthood. So, if you want your kids to be engaged in the Jewish community, and that's a life that you want for them, your best odds approach, and I take this, I think, from What to Expect When You're Expecting. Was a popular book when my kids were being born back in the day. It's not about ensuring success, but you like to ensure best odds. The best odds for having your kid be involved in the Jewish community and really value their learning and value their connection to the Jewish people is investing in them going to Jewish summer camp, especially sleepaway camps, because it is an immersive environment that is sort of even more effective in inculcating those values, but also those skills of prayer and leadership and things like that, much more so than, let's say, a supplementary school or even a full-time day school. So that's a great way for kids to stay engaged over the summertime, and it turns out it's one of the most effective ways to help kids maintain and build on a Jewish identity over time. So thanks for the great question. Let's see. We got Carla J in the house. Nice to see you. Fred Rare is here. Great platform. I enjoy your show when I can. Michael Pacheco, welcome. Michael Pacheco 92 asking rabbinic opinion on alternative medicine. So thanks for asking this question. Just real quick station identification. Welcome to the Jewcurious show, morning show, here live on Twitch TV, simulcasting to YouTube and Facebook. Happy to have you, whatever platform you are watching on and joining us. I may take a little pause to check comments and things on Facebook and YouTube to see who's out there. I will say, if you want to ask a question and get it answered, the best thing to do is to join us on twitch.tv/Jewcurious. That's the chat that I'm monitoring real time for questions. And also, if you come over and like what we're doing, or even are mildly interested in what we're doing, go ahead and hit the follow button there's like a little button up above this video on Twitch. Hit follow, because what we're doing right now is we're building the first and I think only channel dedicated to Jewish learning on Twitch, and following us, getting up to this, we're shooting for this level of 50 followers that unlocks all sorts of features for this community. So give us a try there. But let me jump into Michael Pacheco's question, rabbinic opinion on alternative medicine. I'll say it this way. Rabbinic opinion strongly counsels the effectiveness of medicine, right? We're not like, okay, pray the measles away, right? If you have advice from a doctor, listen to the advice from your doctor. It's not specific on who that doctor is necessarily, but Judaism, I'll say for the most part, and there are fundamentalist exceptions to this, are strong advocates of science and medical science, and like the Torah isn't necessarily mutually exclusive from scientific discovery, practical health interventions, and things like that. So, for example, when it comes to Yom Kippur, this is a holiday on which we have a fast. It's one of our two big fast days of the year, Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. And the Jewish law pertaining to Yom Kippur, as it's stated in the Shulchan Aruch and elsewhere, you should fast on Yom Kippur, which means no eating or drinking for 25 hours. However, if your doctor says that fasting would jeopardize your health, not only are you permitted to break the fast, you are required to break the fast. Like if your doctor says, even if you feel strong enough to fast, but your doctor says, no, you shouldn't do that, Jewish law requires that you listen to your doctor, right? If a medical professional has said, has told you one thing, and sort of the tradition is saying something else, listen to the medical professional. Life supersedes just about everything in terms of mitzvot, right? Because we want you to live a long life and get healthy and be able to do more mitzvot. So that's the position of the rabbis on medicine in general and following your doctor's advice. It's not specific that that's only true for allopathy versus homeopathy, for example. Like allopathy, I learned in my college health class was sort of the word we have for, typical doctors, right? Guys who go to medical, guys and ladies who go to medical school and get MDs and things like that. Is considered allopathy, as opposed to homeopathy, which is a different school of medicine, or osteopathy, which is something. It's, the rabbis aren't specific on there's only one good kind of medicine. And so when it comes to alternative medicine, like if it is helping you, then it's helping you. And all the more, then whatever medicine is helping you, that's the medicine that you should practice, or rather listen to the doctors who help you. And so, generally speaking, if a doctor is telling you something to do, whether that's a doctor of allopathy, homeopathy, osteopathy, whatever other, Asian medicine, things like that, that's valuable. So, Jewish sources don't necessarily pick battles as opposed to like what's the right kind of medicine to follow. Are there things that seem so alternative that they're not maybe based in science or things like that? Then I would say, do what's effective for you. When it comes to, some people are saying, you can't make us have vaccines, for example. And this has come up a lot in the news lately because there are a lot of individuals and entire communities that are opting out of vaccination. And many of those communities are religious communities. And most noticeably in the news, there are fundamentalist Jewish communities that are opting out of vaccination and putting the population of children in their cities at risk. And so I feel actually very strongly about this. If there are some people who are kind of skeptical about vaccination, I respect your beliefs, and I don't want your kid in school with my kid. I'll just say that right up front, and I hope I may lose some viewers over that, and I'm sorry if I upset you, but we have a responsibility for one another, and that responsibility includes contributing to a public health scenario that preserves the most lives, right? So if you are opting out of vaccination for whatever reason, that's fine. You just don't get to participate in the rest of society with people who are not opting out of vaccination. So I know that might not have been the question you asked, but I saw an in. I wanted to slip that in there. I personally am pro-vaccination according to the schedules as established by, the CDC and places like that. So I highly support taking care of your fellow people by participating in public health movements that save lives. So speaking of medical interventions, let's see. Call Me Lucy Lee says, what is your view on Brit Shalom and Jewish families not to circumcise because of belief in bodily autonomy? Can Judaism accept using symbolism instead of actually cutting flesh like we do at Passover? So I'm going to acknowledge, as somebody who observes trends in the Jewish world, that there are people who are opting out of circumcision for Jews born with penises. I don't want to describe gender labels, as we're understanding that more and more. But I think the way this question is asked is actually making a lot of assumptions about where circumcision is coming from. And so I'll say, yes, there are Jews who are opting for something that they call Brit Shalom, which is welcoming a child into the covenant with shalom, which could mean peace, as opposed to what they perceive as violence in this medical intervention. Or whole, shalom is related to shalem, or wholeness, meaning no intervention. I'll say, yes, there are Jews who are doing things that are radically against Jewish tradition. And, that's a true statement, and it's not something that I necessarily advocate. I often ask people like, where are you coming from with this? Because I firmly believe that that circumcision has been a part of the Jewish tradition since, let's say, I forget the chapter. I'm going to say like chapter 12, 11 of Genesis, something like that. God said to Abraham, who was a very old man, like, I think I'm trying to just do the math here. I think he was 70 when he was called. He was in his 90s when he circumcised himself, I think, and then was asked to circumcise the rest of the males in his household. And then when Isaac was born, Isaac was circumcised, and from then on, this has been a part of the Jewish tradition, is that males are circumcised at the age of 8 days. And this has been true. This is possibly the oldest continuously practiced religious ritual on earth that has, there's no clear, there's certain exceptions and things like this, but there's no evidence that this has, by and large, maimed the Jewish population or destroyed the lives of individuals involved. And yet there are people who are squeamish about this. There are vocal Jewish critics of this. Alicia Silverstone is this actress who said, why aren't people born perfect? Like, if we're created in the image of God, why does this medical intervention happen? And it's just, this is a thing that Jews do with minimal long-term impact on the child. Let's see. Call Me Lucy Lee says, maybe men should have to circumcise at 90 then, seems more fair. Look, I'm not gonna argue with you necessarily about your particular child. I think Jewish parents should make decisions for their children. What I am not convinced by is this argument of bodily autonomy, in the sense that some parents say, if I shouldn't circumcise my child because what right do I have to make major decisions for my child? And they should make this choice for them when they are older. And my two responses to that are, first off, you make important life-changing decisions for your children all the time when they don't have the wisdom or the capacity for speech or things to determine their own future. And that's what's involved in being a parent. Welcome to the club. We got jackets. Like, parents make decisions for their children that children live with, that children rebel against, and things like this. And so we do those kinds of decisions all the time. So if you say, I shouldn't be allowed to make any decisions for my child that they can make for themselves, that's just not necessarily the approach to parenting that I would take. But again, I'll go back to what I said to KG Wilcox earlier. I can't make that decision for you, but you get to make decisions for your child. And I just think that's a true statement. The other thing is, if you choose not to circumcise your child, you are making that choice for them, right? Because it is much less likely that they are going to choose to do that for themselves when it's done for a child. Like, I'm giving my child this gift of being a part of a covenant that goes back 3,800 years, of which they recover from medically like that. I mean, it's something that could be done at home with no ill effect, with rapid healing, because babies heal very quickly. P.S. They don't remember this, so it's not a traumatic experience for them long term. But if you say, I'm not going to do this for my child, I'm going to make them do that for themselves, when they're an adult to make that decision, that's a hospital stay. That's a month or so of recovery. So some would argue that you're actually robbing your child of that decision. So that's my opinion about it. Again, I know plenty of Jewish parents who have made this decision not to circumcise their child. That's their decision to make. But I'm not convinced that, parents shouldn't make decisions for their children. And I'm actually more convinced that if you're deciding not to circumcise your child, you are making that decision for them, because they're not going to choose that later in life. So that's kind of my take on it. And I know it's controversial. Like, of the videos that I've made for YouTube, and I've made all sorts of videos like, what's a ketubah? What's Shabbat? What do people mean when they say Shavua Tov? Like, all sorts of Jewish things. I decided to make a couple of videos on let's say Brit Milah, that is the ritual of circumcision for 8-day-old people with penises. On Hatafat Dam Brit, that's the procedure if a child is born without foreskin. This was sort of treated in the Talmud, like, what do you do if the child doesn't have the foreskin to do Brit Milah? And they said, well, you just take like a drop of blood from that area, which is which is like, I'll say minimally invasive, right? It's like getting a shot. And I know some parents are opposed to that. And it's also, these are things that are done by people who convert to Judaism. Like adults who convert to Judaism who haven't been circumcised need to be circumcised. If they have been circumcised, then you need to take a drop of blood. So I made these videos to sort of explain why we do that. And I have not gotten more trolls on any video than I've gotten on those videos. And I get it. People feel very strongly about it. In some people's minds, this is akin to female genital mutilation that happens in other cultures around the world. And I have to say, these are apples and oranges, because the removal of a little bit of foreskin compared to a radical clitorectomy in some cultures, apples and oranges as far as sexual functionality is concerned. So I could get a lot of hate stuff for this, but that's the risk that I'm taking, because this is, like I said, one of the oldest continuously practiced religious rituals. This is a gift that you can give your child to say, you're in the club, and you don't have to be embarrassed when you go into the locker room with other Jewish boys down the road because your parents made a different decision. And it's tough. Like brises are not easily things that are just a breeze for parents, because you, especially for mothers, in my observation, not just like a sexist assumption, mothers have a hard time at a bris, because I have grown this baby in my body for 9 months. It's born healthy, God willing, and then suddenly somebody's cutting my child, and that's a hard thing to be present for. And it heals, and then that person is joining a relatively unbroken chain of 3,800 years of tradition, and for which they have no memory as far as the trauma is concerned. So I'm taking my stand on that, and I hope people are okay with that. But if you're not, I get it, and hope we can still be friends. So Kathy says, Carl and Teresa were on YouTube, but their comments posted briefly. Let's see. Carmela says, I'm still working my way through the podcast, but I've seen that you haven't made any recently. Is this related to not going into details, new opportunity, or is this a general change of the medium for the show? Just wondering. It's just, I'll say thanks for the question, and I probably owe people an explanation for this. Yes, I haven't made as many new episodes of the podcast lately. I've actually recorded a couple of interviews and have another one scheduled for an interview. Great guest, Esther Kostanowitz, I'm interviewing pretty soon. So I want to go back to it. It's just, it's been a crazy few months here. I've taken on kind of a new rabbinic opportunity here locally in like real live space that's taken a lot of my attention. I do want to get back to the podcast, get back to my roots. This year has been a journey for me of trying different digital media platforms for connecting to people, however we can connect with people. Which means, sometimes when you try a bunch of different stuff, you can't be consistent with all of those things. But I do want to get back into the podcast space. It's just been taking a little bit of hiatus. I really appreciate the people I've been able to connect with on the podcast, meaning like I have people come to me online, or people who meet me in person say, hey, love the podcast. Please make more of those. And so I do want to get back into making the audio version of the podcast. Just lately, I'll say for about the last 2-3 months, I've really been focusing a lot on this kind of live video interaction, because I really appreciate getting questions from people live that we can discuss together. So I'm going to take a little bit into, I'm going to just dive into, let's see what other comments and things we're getting in different formats. We had Carla J join us on YouTube. Shalom from Cyprus, from Teresa. Omed Chazak 613 says, Shalom friends, my brother and sister-in-law are highly involved in their church VBS. So I guess that's Vacation Bible School, as opposed to Valley Beth Shalom, a conservative synagogue here in the LA area. And let's see what's going on over on YouTube. We got a couple of comments here, or excuse me, on Facebook. A couple of comments here on Facebook. What's going on Facebook? Some folks watching over there. It's a little bit harder for me to see on my phone. What are the, come on, comments? Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, so, we're figuring this out as we go along. And maybe if I go over to my thing here. So yeah, it's not so like if you're coming to say, okay, I want the Torah portion in 2 minutes and I'm in and out, quick and clean. I don't necessarily know how that's working. Let's see. Lucy Lee says, I have a question. Have you heard of Brit Shalom, and what is your opinion on Jews not choosing to circumcise? Okay, I get that. Drake Clark says, good Tuesday. Good Tuesday to you, Drake Clark. Sort of a late Shavua Tov. So, quick pause for station identification. This Shah is the Jewcurious show. This is where people who are curious about Judaism get together, ask me questions. I'm a rabbi. I'll say I'm a conservative rabbi just because that's where I was ordained by a seminary in the conservative movement. I mostly work in conservative synagogues, but I teach in all kinds of synagogues, and I'm open to anybody who is Jew curious. This could mean you're Jewish and curious about it. This could mean you're curious about Judaism, but not quite Jewish yet, or no intention of being Jewish, but you're curious about the Jewish roots of your own faith. In any case, you are welcome here to ask whatever questions you have, and I really appreciate the community that we've been able to build around this, around the podcast, around these live sessions. And I'll say, if you're a little bit nervous about asking a question, the people in this community are some of the nicest community that I know. So let's see. KG Wilcox asks a great question. Since we're doing easy questions, about circumcision and parenting choices, what are the 5 genders discussed in the Talmud? I have my pencil ready. So one thing, I'm gonna recommend another place for details, just because I've been studying this quite a bit lately. I keep forgetting the names of some of them, but it's roughly this. So there are actually 6 genders that are discussed in the Talmud. And there's a great reference to this on, I think it's myjewishlearning.com. So if you type in My Jewish Learning Genders Talmud, you'll find a great article about this. And so I found this great article and then did a little deeper digging. But there's essentially 6. And there is Zachar and Nekeva. This is male and female. Sort of born, with male parts, identifies as male as an adult. There is born with female parts, identifies as a female as an adult. There is what's called an androgynos, which is clearly a Greek loan word into Talmudic Aramaic, which is somebody who is born with both. So somebody who's born with both sets of genitals. And there is, I believe the term is tum for someone who's born with neither, right? So we've got male, female, both. What's the proper medical term for that? I'm not a doctor. Both, and then neither. Someone born with neither sets of obvious genitals. And then there's 2 more that are mentioned in the Talmud. One is someone who is kind of born with male physical characteristics, but as an adult expresses more of the other gender, more of a female gender identity. And then there's another category, which is somebody who's born with female female physicality, but exhibits a more male appearance as an adult. So we've got male, female, neither, both, trans women, and trans men. And there's that great article I referred you to, myjewishlearning.com, lists all of these, gives their proper Talmudic names that I'm still getting the hang of, and says how many different references there are in the Torah, in the Mishnah, in the Midrash, in the Talmud, just so you can see all the different places that these are discussed. Cara Amelie says, so it's safe to say that these aren't just gender descriptions, but also intersex. I'm not sure that I know exactly what you mean by intersex as a term. And KG Wilcox asks, what's intersex? But these are the different gender identities that are discussed in our tradition going back, let's say, at least 1,500 to 2,000 years. This notion of, just male, just female, both, neither, trans woman and trans man go back a very long time in the Jewish tradition. So I hope that's helpful for you. And I'm here to answer that question and any other questions that people have here on the Jewcurious show. For a little bit of housekeeping, I like to keep a running schedule of when the show is going to be on this week. Couldn't do it yesterday. Had some Beit Din responsibilities yesterday morning, but we're here today. We'll be here for the rest of the week at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 noon Eastern time. And so tomorrow, so I'm always looking for topics for shows. Thursdays, I like to do Parashat HaShavua, which means this Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern, we'll be talking about the Torah portion of the week, which is a good one. And I say this about a lot of Torah portions, but this one is really a good one. This is the story of the 12 spies. I like to think of them as scouts more than spies. Spies is like a little bit cloak and dagger, but sort of the 12 scouts who go into the promised land and report back. And based on what they report, comes the decision that the Jewish people are going to wander in the wilderness for another 40 years. Right. We've been if you've been following along in your own program in Sefer Bamidbar, or the book In Wilderness, aka Numbers, we've been wandering in the wilderness for just over a year now. And finally, we have the opportunity to enter into the promised land, and we don't. And we say, we eschew the opportunity. Eschew? Gesundheit. We say, thanks, but no thanks. It's super scary over there. Yes, there's giant fruit, but you know who eats giant fruit, don't you? Giants do. So we're too scared to go over there. And God says, you know what? If you think you're not ready to go, you're right. You're not. And so I'm going to make you wander in the desert for another 40 years until everybody who was an adult when you left Egypt has died. And only the people who were children when they left Egypt, or the children who have been born along the way, get to go into the promised land. That's what happens in this week's Parsha. It is a critical turning point in the narrative of the Torah, but it also teaches us, a little spoiler alert here, why a minyan is 10 people. There's this thing we have called minyan. This is a quorum for certain Jewish prayers. Like, you can't normally say these prayers in a community if you don't have 10 or more Jewish adults. And how is that related to the story of the scouts in this week's Parsha Shlach Lecha? We'll be talking about that on Thursday. And then on Friday, oh my goodness gracious, on Friday, it's going to be Fun Friday once again. Last week we had a great session. It was our first kind of like Fun Friday multicast on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch, where we played Mario Kart while I answered Jewish questions. So that's our Fun Friday. Tomorrow, maybe I'll talk about these 6 genders. That's a great topic. Wednesdays, I'm always kind of at a loss. Tuesdays are Ask Me Anything. Wednesday is Dealer's Choice. And so I think maybe tomorrow I'll devote our discussion to the 6 genders in traditional rabbinic Judaism. So that'll be our topic for tomorrow. I'll do a little bit more research tonight, and we'll dig deep into that in tomorrow's show. So let's see. Cara Amelie says, from Wikipedia, intersex people are individuals born with any of several variations in sex characteristics, including chromosomes, gonads, sex hormones, or genitals that, according to the UN Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, do not fit the typical definitions of male or female bodies. And Cara Amelie says they are as common as redheads. And KG Wilcox says, whoa, I had no idea. So that's great for bringing that to this community. K. Dixie says, KG, as an example, a baby may be born looking like a female, but turns out to have X and Y chromosomes, male. So this is a common feature of humanity. I won't say a common feature of humanity, but an extant feature of humanity that we've been observing for as long as there have been humans, right? And what I love about the Jewish tradition is that we've been wrestling with human life, what happens in human life, how humans are born, for a very, very long time in a continuous conversation about this. And so I really appreciate that we get to have these kinds of conversations on this show that allows us to tap into the wisdom of generations, if not millennia, of Jewish thought that can have real meaning and real impact on our understanding of life today. So this has been a fantastic discussion in my mind here on the Jewcurious show. We've talked about circumcision and the choices around that. We've talked about babies, like baby showers and baby namings and things like that. We've talked about different genders in the Jewish community and in the recognition of those genders in Jewish literature going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so Carmelie says, I'll be sure to tune in tomorrow before my conversion class. Right on. So I think we're going to wrap up this show for today. We've been going for about an hour now. Thank you, everybody who has tuned in today. KG Wilcox, Cara Amelie, let's see, Lucy Lee had a great question about Brit Milah and Brit Shalom and stuff like that. We've had Carla J in the house. We've had Teresa in the house on YouTube. We've had our friend Drake Clark over on Facebook. Thank you for being here with me today. This is the highlight of my life is sharing Jewish wisdom, Jewish thought, Jewish recipes, Jewish superstitions, Jewish jokes from time to time with people who are genuinely, sincerely, and lovingly Jew curious. Before we go, I just want to say a quick word about following this channel. So here on Twitch, this great platform for live streaming, we have created the first and perhaps the only channel dedicated to adult Jewish learning. And a way to support that is to look up, on Twitch, come to twitch.tv/Jewcurious if you're not already there. Look up above the video. There's a little button that says follow with a picture of a heart on it. Click that button and follow us, because what we're trying to do is get to 50 followers. That unlocks this new status on Twitch. Twitch knows that we're serious and gives us all sorts of new tools to interact with each other. So support this channel. Just click the follow button. Doesn't cost you nothing. You have to log into Twitch, but that just takes seconds. And that really helps us build this community that we are building right now. And this is important to me personally, because if you go on YouTube and Facebook and other places online, a lot of the digital media that's out there is dominated by a small fringe of fundamentalist Jewish voices. I say if you type in a Jewish question on YouTube, for example, about 90% of the results that you get are from places like Chabad or Eish HaTorah. I'm not knocking them. They do incredible work in the Jewish community, but they have one very particular expectation and expression of what the right way to be Jewish is, which is not representative of the Jewish community as a whole. It represents their population, which is totally cool for them. But sort of Orthodox outreach and fundamentalist groups have dominated the conversation online for years now. And that's the case on YouTube, even though I love YouTube and connect with a lot of people that way. Here on Twitch is a brave frontier where we don't have to necessarily shoulder through all that particular fundamentalist viewpoint. And so that's why I really like being on this channel with this Jewcurious community. So thank you for learning with me today. Kay Dixie says, yes, speaking of recipes, pies are on the agenda. I do owe a couple of pie recipes. Last week I was teaching. Last couple of weeks I've had like pie emergencies in my teaching session. Like I've been teaching online and then, pie's got to come out of the oven. Got to run out, take out the pie. We've had coconut, and this is, now I take no credit for this. My wife makes an incredible coconut cream pie and a chocolate silk pie that she made for dinner with friends the other night. And if you like chocolate silk pie, what she does is she makes the crust out of something very special. If you're ever in the kosher section of the grocery store and you see those elite sugar wafers, where it's like the wafers with the kind of chocolate cream in between, so she crushes those up to make the pie crust, and then puts like the chocolate pudding and the whipped cream on top of that, and it is bananas. Bananas, bananas, even though there's no bananas in that recipe. So thank you very much for learning with me today. It's been my great joy. Thank you for everybody who supports this community and who is super nice to each other in our chat. That's my favorite thing about this community. I'm going to sign off for today. Keep those Jewish questions coming. We'll be talking about the 6 genders represented in traditional rabbinic literature tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 noon Eastern. Catch us on your lunch break, New Yorkers. And until then, heroes, I wish you success and health for the day and into the future. And until we, excuse me, a little bubble there. Until next time, heroes. Peace.
you.